After 7 weeks of viewing, fans of the Rings of Power were left with a number of instances that both intrigued and perplexed them. The series has received praise for Bear McCreary's superb score, excellent graphics, and captivating performances all around, despite some divergent perspectives. What can we anticipate from the second season now that it will follow the canon of the novels? Watch this video to see what fans on Reddit had to say. First on the list is what happens to the other rings. Many people consider Tolkien's intricate knowledge to be sacred, which has turned some people away from the Rings of Power because of its compressed timeline and some of the creative liberties it took. The finale's order in which the rings were made was one way they accomplished it. After the 7 dwarven rings and the 9 rings for men were created, the 3 elf rings, namely Narya, Nenya, and Vilya, were constructed according to the text without Sauron's guidance. The grandiose picture that Halbrand/Sauron returned to Mordor, however, prompted many amusing tweets. U/Blu-ray High Def predicted that Sauron would return to Eregion in Season 2 as Halbrand again and persuade Celebrimbor to make the remaining rings with him. It depends entirely on Galadriel and presumably Elrond or Gil-galad departing Eregion. But narratively speaking, that's not too difficult to pull off. The key question is whether Celebrimbor would continue to believe Halbrand, because the finale didn't show him to be as aware of the fraud as Elrond. Some believed he might already be tainted. Next up, how will these events take place? There are further possibilities for the second season's development of the other rings. It may turn out that they will move through the various groups season by season. First the elves, then the dwarves, and ultimately the men. U/So woke I don't sleep posted that Sauron would simply visit the individual races on his own, first to the dwarven lords in their stone halls, and persuade them to produce the rings, which would result in conflict between them and the elves, if not outright war. However, Sauron must be involved in the production of the other rings in order to control them. The elven rings are unique since they were unaffected by Sauron. Whatever the location, Sauron as Halbrand must meet up with Celebrimbor and the lords and kings who will receive the rings, whether it be in Eregion, Khazad-dûm, or somewhere else. About Galadriel's struggle. Galadriel must solve a problem that is exceedingly difficult. She probably can't tell the other elves who Halbrand is and why he abruptly vanished, or at least she can't straight away, whether out of respect for her dignity or out of fear. According to U/Hrothgar signing, she can't tell the elves because he is Sauron, and she can't keep Elrond from finding out for very long. Gil-galad sent her away in the hopes that her leaving Middle-earth and the end of her search for Sauron would prevent his approaching return. Unfortunately, she unintentionally confirmed his assertion. She welcomed him back to do even more hurt in an effort to build the strength to combat her adversary. For a while, she would have to keep that a secret. She might, at the very least, be able to inform Gil-galad, who in the novels was not deceived by Sauron in the same way that Annatar was. What does the future hold for Elrond? Even though he didn't fully understand the situation, Elrond was aware of Halbrand's deceit. He was aware that the last king of the Southlands was no longer alive, but he wouldn't likely hear back from Galadriel on his identity. According to another idea from user U/Hrothgar signing, Elrond would start to put the pieces together to solve the mystery. He might even have to confront Halbrand. Maybe Halbrand would confess that he is truly a Maya who was sent to help them rather than a human. That would involve Elrond experiencing the destruction of Mordor personally, in which case Sauron might try to influence him by pointing out that he is a Maya, although a fallen one. What happens to the dwarves? Unfortunately, Durin IV, Disa, and the other dwarves were not present in the season finale because the reanimated Balrog had ended their storyline's cliffhanger in the previous episode. Durin's Bane is present, although it's unclear if this portends that Khazad-dûm's, which takes place thousands of years later in the books, will be featured in Season 2. They might bring about their own extinction, though, if they insist on having their own rings. U/Castro Gassio speculated that maybe Durin would gain control in Khazad-dûm Doom and start to mine again, which would bring the Balrog back into play. Despite the fact that Durin IV's father appears to have abandoned him, the dwarf is, fortunately, friends with Elrond, an elf, just like in The Lord of the Rings. He might crave 1 or 7 of the magnificent new rings after seeing them in order to help his family win back his father's favor. Next on the list is Sauron versus Adar. Speaking of home, Adar and the orcs now have their own country thanks to the eruption of Mount Doom in Episode 6, and Sauron is now a resident of Mordor. The mystery surrounding Adar, a character from the program, and his connection to the Dark Lord was one of the season's most intriguing revelations. Although it would have made sense for them to be allies, the Rings of Power has revealed that they are enemies. Adar probably prevented Sauron from reaching the Sundering Sea by setting him on that course. Many viewers are hopeful that the prior struggle will be highlighted in Season 2. According to user u/blobfishpillow, he suspects it would be a Season 2 prologue flashback. This would also demonstrate their ongoing power struggle as they compete to rule over the orcs and Mordor. Let's talk about Sauron and Isildur. Isildur is probably still trapped beneath the flaming debris because, like the dwarves, he was absent from the season finale. Nevertheless, his steadfast steed, Beric, was set free to look for him, but it does indicate that in Season 2, his journey might run into Halbrand and/or Adar. That possibility excites with Nerf, a Redditor who remarked that a meeting between Halbrand and Isildur would be interesting. Having them interact would be a welcome and interesting development for those familiar with the text, even though it had previously been hinted that Isildur would ultimately fail in his attempt to destroy the One Ring. Halbrand might also bring Sauron to Pelargir, and from there back to Numenor, as Isildur last observed him just before Mount Doom erupted. In the War of the Last Alliance, Sauron would be vanquished by Isildur, but in that case, they might only be temporary friends. Journey to Greenwood the Great. All of the Southlanders, including Arondir, Bronwyn, Theo, and the others, are traveling to Pelargir. The clearest example of a Numenorian village in Middle-earth is the scene in The Return of the King, where Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli drove the Corsairs away with the army of the dead. Clustaski, a Redditor, speculated that they could actually wind up in Greenwood the Great, home to the Sindar. King Orifer and Prince Thranduil were introduced, and Arondir requested their assistance to put an end to the Uruks in Mordor. Given that Arondir was from Beleriand, which was devastated after the First Age, perhaps he could find new allies in the Greenwood, including Nori and the Stranger. They are close by, and it would be a fun way for some of the Ring of Power's most endearing characters to get to know one another. Back in Numenor. Regarding Numenor, the season finale saw a few significant events take place there. Importantly, based on the dark sails in the harbor, it appears like the king, Miriel's father, has passed away. He thought she was Miriel, so he let young Irien glimpse the Palantir before he passed away. Galadriel and Miriel both saw Numenor fall, but Irien's vision was not depicted. According to u/the Chinmayadis, a Redditor, Elendil and company would discover a coup by Pharazôn in Numenor, which indicates that Pharazôn has likely seized advantage of the power vacuum. It would be the ideal situation for the queen to return and discover someone else occupying her home. A coup is unavoidable because Pharazôn cannot be trusted, despite what this Redditor believes might happen in the first episode of Season 2. Finally, on new characters. While the cast of The Rings of Power was fantastic and compelling, several viewers noticed some intriguing or perplexing exclusions. Showrunner Patrick McKay recently hinted at the arrival of Círdan the Shipwright, an important elf who also once possessed Narya, along with being gritty and intense. The user, u/BrightSkies42, commented that his assumption is that Anarion is also coming, making making him eager to witness a season that is more intense as a result. Isildur's brother, Anarion, had also been suspensefully teased throughout the Rings of Power's first season, and since he goes on to rule Gondor alongside his brother, many fans anticipate seeing him soon. Other well-known names include Celeborn, Galadriel's spouse, who was eventually mentioned in Episode 7, and Narvi, a Khazad-dûm dwarf who collaborated with Celebrimbor to create the fabled Doors of Durin. Even though there may be a long wait for more, there is undoubtedly much to look forward to. The forging of the 3 elf power rings and the revelation of Halbrand as Sauron marked the conclusion of Season 1. What will happen to the people of Middle-earth in Season 2 is something we should anticipate. Don't forget to subscribe and like. See you in the next video. Bye!